Okay, well, let's pray and we'll get going. And Gary, would you pray for us tonight?
I will try.
Whatever comes to mind.
Champion.
Thanks, sweet Jesus, for giving us this fellowship tonight and the teachings of our pastor and the good friends and the church community here today. And thank you also for protecting President Trump.
Yes.
And keep your fingers on him, please, for the next 4 years. We need him terribly in this time of COVID crisis, as well as the far left thinking. And thank you all for being able to come here tonight and receive this with us. Thank you very much, Jesus. Amen.
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 Good job.
Amen.
Good prayer. Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Gary.
Come on.
It was a good one. It was perfect. It was excellent.
Oh, I needed that.
That was inspired. Thank you. It was. You got it.
I'm ready for round 2.
Excuse me. All right. We finished Judges. Yay!
Yay.
And between Judges and 1 Samuel is this little book called Ruth. And when did this story take place? Well,
Before.
read verse 1. Chapter 1, verse 1 of Ruth. It says, in the days when the judges ruled. So that tells you right there, well, that's why it's placed where it is. It was during the Judges era. So you don't put it in the midst of the, Judges, book of Judges, but you just put it right next to it, because, again, we kind of don't know exactly what it is. Because no specific judge is named. So we don't know, well, during this judge, which is during the Judges era. And here's the problem with dating it, even within the Judges era. It's that there's a woman that is mentioned at the beginning of the book. And I'll just say this, is that in the beginning of Joshua chapter 6, Joshua, and again that, how long was that, 40 plus years? How many years was the book of Joshua? In the beginning of the book of Joshua, we meet Rahab. When the first city they go to take is Jericho. And, we're going to cut to the chase and find out that a central player in this book of Ruth is the son of Rahab. His name is Boaz. So, all right, so where might that put this book? We also know that Boaz becomes the grandfather of somebody, who becomes the grandfather, or actually great-grandfather of somebody, and great-great-grandfather of somebody. And if you already know who it is, it's Obed, Jesse, King David. So, where is it? There may, unless people lived a long time, waited before having a kid, and the generations were very, very long, we might be missing some names somewhere. Because the Judges era is about 370 years. Don't know. Either way, this book was kind of, you might call it a third, in the Hebrew Bible, it's a third appendix. Because I think I told you that the last 4 chapters of Judges was an appendix to the book of Judges. It just gave us 2 more big stories that we don't know where it happened within the book of Judges chronologically. And here's another one. But this book shows us that even though the days of the Judges were morally dark, there's still some Israelites out there faithful to God, and God moves strategically through them. And here's the thing, watch this about Ruth. God's plan is the priority. God's priority is His priority. His priority is to save the world. And He's going to first work to create a nation for Himself. Right? That He had led out of Egypt. He brought them into the promised land, has put up with all their shenanigans and junk, as we've been looking how many weeks now through Judges. And also there's the book of Ruth. And I'm telling you this, Ruth should overshadow the rest. Why? Because in the midst of the Judges, the story of Ruth takes place. But what's the story of Ruth? She's the grandmother, the great-great-grandmother of King David. Through that line, through his line comes the Messiah. Oh! So it's as if Judges is done. We look at the, oh, what a mess, what a mess. And then there's a magnifying glass of God that drops right in there. Now watch this. Here's the story of Ruth, 4 chapters only. And it's as if, oh, this was the big thing God was up to. He was doing stuff as we were looking. He's talking to them. But God, how many things does God do at once? At the same time, what's he doing? Juggle. So he could deal with all these people, all these kings, all the foreign nations, blah, blah, blah. And somewhere during it all, he's creating the lineage of the Messiah to come. Right? Just wonderful. So that's the book of Ruth.
It just shows what God can do if there is even a remnant.
Yes.
I mean, you got this whole era of darkness, of religious depravity, moral depravity, and in the midst of all that is faith and love for God.
Yes.
And God blesses.
Yes. Yes. And amen. And God's grace is so beyond us. It is so much bigger than we can imagine that, Rahab, she's a hooker. She was probably a temple prostitute there for the Canaanites. Again, she's probably, at the time, a very young girl. She might have been a 16-year-old that mom and dad sold out to be a hooker. So she was still a pagan prostitute. God purposely brings into the lineage. And that's great. The genealogy that the Son of God comes from, again, what amazes me about Matthew chapter 1, every sin that could possibly be committed, every law broken, that God said don't break, is broken through all these people as you read Matthew chapter 1. And I think this is done on purpose. And then God is going to not only use this, prostitute, her son is going to marry one of the people God said don't marry, a Moabite. Well, that's Ruth. She's not a Jew. She's one of these pagan worshipers. But God brings her in. Grace. He uses the prostitute, Rahab, who's a Canaanite. She's not a Jew. So we're also watering down the line. Right? We're watering down, you might say, the purity of the race, right? Of the Jews. Well, within just a couple of generations, we got, holy cow. We're going to have 2 Canaanites. So how Jewish is Obed? The grandfather of King David.
Are you saying that Ruth is related to David?
Yes.
Great-grandmother.
And that Jesus is related to David?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And here's
He's not saying it. The Bible said it.
Jesus got his blue eyes.
You're funny. Okay, so here's the thing. Do I go here? Because it'll take a little while. It could take a little while.
That's okay.
Okay.
It's a short chat.
Jesus hasn't returned yet.
As you consider the genealogy of Jesus, it is not that Jesus is a physical descendant of them. He happens to be born in the line, since the Jews always trace somebody's lineage, their genealogy, through the dad. In Matthew's gospel, it is Joseph, Jesus' earthly father, biological father, a surrogate dad. He had nothing to do with Jesus' birth. Didn't even have sex with Mary. Wasn't even married to her by the time she was pregnant. And so what was put into Mary? Well, here's the thing. was a fertilized egg implanted in Mary, or was the male component of Jesus put into Mary's egg?
Good question, we don't know.
See, we don't know.
Is Jesus
So
even a
either-
descendant of Mary? Does Jesus even have DNA of Mary?
Right, so he may not have DNA from Mary either. This literally could be God taking a fertilized egg and placing it in a woman so that he is born, as all human beings are, because the way God says things have to be done is, I need a second Adam, I need a do-over, I need somebody who is born, who from scratch lives a life in perfection, sinless, no rebellion to me. That person then doesn't owe me their own death. There's no reason for them to die. They could live forever. And if I choose, which God does, to trade places between a perfect and the imperfect, a sinless and the sinful, and I arrange for his death, then in my eyes, would say God, I'm going to count the righteousness of my son for the unrighteousness of the rest of his sons and daughters. And I'm going to then put that label of perfection on them. So if he's going to die a death he doesn't deserve, well then the equal opposite, I'm going to give you a life of eternity that a perfect person, would have that you don't deserve. So he swaps them. Pretty wild. So now, the Gospel of Luke records the genealogy of Mary. And what's really cool about that is that Mary's line, she is a Levite. She's a descendant of Aaron, the first priest, the brother of Moses. Joseph is from the tribe of Judah. So, you've got Judah, the tribe of all the kings, starting with King David, and then Solomon. And so you've got in Jesus the king and the priest. And that is a fulfillment of Scripture, that this Messiah is going to fulfill those offices.
You said Ruth was a Moabite?
She's a Moabite,
Okay, so...
which we're going to see.
So
Did that make
she-
sense what I just tried to unpack real quick there?
So she, being a woman, and for lack of better words, doesn't taint the fact that Jesus is related to her as a Moabite.
No, and here's the cool thing.
Nothing.
Which, so I'm glad you're asking. This is great. Yeah, nothing does. Tony goes, right? Nothing does. Why? Because, watch. Heap onto Jesus all the crap you can. Heap onto Jesus the most vile, terrible lineage you can. In this, there's murderers, adulterers, Canaanites, a hooker. Put it all on that line, and it's as if God goes, look what I can redeem.
Yeah.
Right.
Give me the most unfaithful, untrustworthy people. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I mean, what a mess they are. I mean, literally. Right? We all know their story. And then all the way through. And as you see, okay, I got Judah and Tamar. Now, who's Judah? Okay, Judah again is through his line the kings come. King David comes. It's Judah's line that is found in Matthew chapter 1, the genealogy of Jesus. But that line is traced not through any other wife of Judah, because he had more than one wife. It's traced through his daughter-in-law, Tamar, who dressed up like a hooker because her husband died, and then she was going to, then be given to the second son. He dies. Third son, he's too young. So she dresses up like a hooker because she goes, I need, which is interesting, it's like the story here, I need a male so that I have possessions. And that's going to be that's the crux of the story here, okay? As we look at the very beginning. Because possessions are passed down only through the males. A woman without a male means you're broke.
So rather than possessions, you could say, I just need
I need a guy.
support, I need support.
It's very interesting, and I'm going to get into it in detail. But so, just to say that even Judah, Jesus, the line of the tribe of Judah. Judah, look at his line. He sleeps with his son's wife unknowingly, gets her pregnant, and I'm just going to go. That's just how it is. Okay, so. Right, this is wild. Okay, but that's our God, and I don't get to the text here. So here we go. First 5 verses. We're given the background of the story. Somebody please read the first 5.
In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land, and a man from Bethlehem in Judah, together with his wife and 2 sons, went to live for a while in the country of Moab. The man's name was Elimelech. His wife's name was Naomi. The names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem, Judah, and they went to Moab and lived there. Now Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. They married Moabite women, one named Orpah and the other named Ruth, after they had lived there for about 10 years.
Okay, so there's a famine in the land, we're told, right? Of Judah. Okay, now that would be what? The tribe's land is marked out during the time of Joshua Judges, not the southern kingdom of Judah, which was created by the civil war during Solomon's son's reign, at the beginning of his reign, right? Because you remember, you got Rehoboam, that is Solomon's son, the rightful heir to the throne, and the majority of the nation doesn't want him, and they want a guy named Jeroboam, and so they split. And they go, well, we're leaving, and us who live up here, whatever, we're not having anything to do with you anymore. And so it's everybody above Jerusalem, pretty much. That's the northern kingdom, and then the southern kingdom is only 2 tribes, and Judah's one of them. Okay, so, and but that comes later. So this is the tribe's land. So there's a famine in the land, the territory there in Canaan that Judah occupied. And one man, whose name is Elimelech, he decides to move with his wife Naomi and their 2 sons. What are their names? They go to the land of, where do they go? Moab. Why? To wait out the famine. That is not where Jews are supposed to move. Don't go to Moab if you haven't conquered it yet. I mean, what are you trying to do? I don't care. I mean, okay, so do we have a lack of faith on somebody's part here? Can God take care of Elimelech's family through the famine? Did God tell them to move?
Doesn't appear so.
It doesn't sound like it. This is his choice. And it doesn't sound like it's a good choice. Okay? And God does amazing things out of our bad choices. Yeah?
God for that.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so his 2 sons, once they're there, take wives for themselves. Well, you're not supposed to do that. Okay? If you're not supposed to fall in love and intermarry with a Moabite, well, don't move to Moab if the only women around, the only fish in the sea, are Moabite women. Because there's no Jews there but them. They're the only Jews there because they're not supposed to be there. Alright, so we're getting this? Am I too animated?
Nope.
We good?
Yep.
Okay? So, at one point, we're simply told both sons died. By causes what? Unknown. But that's horrific. And
STDs.
Could be. Okay? So, Elimelech dies from a cause unknown. The boys marry 2 women And we don't know the guys' names, but the women's names are Orpah and Ruth. And what's interesting is, you know Oprah Winfrey?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Her mom named her that name, Oprah, after this woman. Which I don't understand why, because this woman bails out. Okay, but whatever. Okay, and she spells it wrong. Yeah, because she didn't like Orpah. So she decided to flip a couple letters and say, I like Oprah better than Orpah. So we're going to name that's where Oprah Winfrey actually was given her name, and she tells you that either way. In those days, again, property and possessions were only passed down to males in the family. Dad gives everything to the son, nothing to the daughter. Sorry, honey. Whoever you marry, whatever he's got, that's yours. See, what he's got is yours. Mine goes to my boys. Whoever you marry, that's where you better get married. That's where you're going to get your stuff. Okay? And,
Every woman's gotta have your stuff.
right? Okay? Here's the problem, though. Here's, the tragedy. You know what you call a tragedy? This is a tragedy at the beginning. So it sets the stage and it sets the hook for the reader. And what you just were told is that you've got 3 widows plus no males equals 0 inheritance. Yeah, it's an equation.
Right.
3 women
Plus 0
plus no males equals no nothing.
What happened to all the stuff?
They got nothing, right? Yeah. What happens to it?
It goes to the nearest living.
It goes to the state. It sits in probate until there is a kinsman redeemer found. We're going to get that. So,
Yeah.
now, verse 6. Somebody read that?
Then she rose with her daughters-in-laws, that she might return from the country of Moab. For she had heard in the country of Moab that the Lord had visited his people by giving them bread.
She had heard that God did what?
Bread.
So God could take care of people somehow in the midst of the famine? Maybe, does that mean he ended the famine? Or God just, he had some other friendly tribe? Listen, we'll buff you out. Why don't you tell us you're kind of having a hard time, So whatever, God takes care of them. So she goes, okay, I guess it's time to go home. But at some point along the road, Naomi is going to urge her daughters to return to their own homeland and their own parents' homes. If somebody would read, in fact, Katie, if you just keep reading, go 7 through 14, please.
Therefore she went out from the place where she was, and her 2 daughters-in-law with her, and they went on the way to return to the land of Judah. And Naomi said to her 2 daughter-in-laws, go return each to her mother's house. The Lord deal kindly with you, and you, and you have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant that you may find rest, each in the house of her husband. So she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. And they said to her, surely we will return with you to your people. But Naomi said, turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Are there still sons in my womb, and they may be your husbands? Turn back, my daughters. Go, for I am too old to have a husband. If I should say I have hope, if I should say have a husband tonight, and should also bear sons, would you wait for them till they were grown? Would you restrain yourself from having husbands? No, my daughters, for it grieves me very much for your sakes that the hand of the Lord had gone out against me. Then they lifted up their voices and wept again, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her.
She prays, that the Lord would be as kind to these 2 Moabite women as they had been to her and to their dead husbands, verses 8 and 9. And she prayed that God would help each of them find a resting place, each in the house, of her husband. The term resting place, menucha, it just means peace and happiness. You know, somehow go find a new guy. Listen, I'm too old to have kids, and even if I was pregnant, I mean, she goes, what? I mean, you imagine the conversation and just the emotion. Girls, if I even had kids right now, if I could give you 2 more sons, thank you for loving my sons, and if I could give you 2 more, I would, but I mean, if I was pregnant, are you going to wait that long? No way. I mean, your clock's ticking and you ain't. I mean, you got needs and emotions, and go find somebody. You know, go back home. And they're crying. They're weeping, and she, you know, want to kiss you goodbye, and they at first both say, no, we want to go with you. Now, think about the relationship then.
They loved her.
They loved her.
Yeah.
I'm sure she was an amazing mom. She really became a mom to them. And you know, there's a relationship now. They don't want to see her off alone. It's like, hey, listen, let's when one person's out on their luck, listen, let's all, you know, we're all out on our luck. Let's get together. Let's not separate. Right? I mean, let's team up and see what we can do.
And as much as women weren't really valued in the Jewish community, they were probably valued much less in the Moabite community.
Oh, right. Yeah,
They were
sure.
probably valued more in that family than they had ever been valued before. Otherwise, they would have gone back to their father's
That's where they
houses
want, yeah.
Right. That's good.
willingly.
Sure. So, Meruchan, that it's a term that summarizes the qualities, you might say, of an ideal life. And she's saying, it ain't with me. You know, but I still believe you'll find one. And, you know, pretty much, you know, married with children in the house with a white picket fence, right? And Naomi, you know, kisses them both. The grief of that moment is unbearable as these 3 women, they weep and they wail. Author Larry Crabb, in a book called Shattered Dreams, I've got, some of you might have read it, it's amazing. And it's really an amazing book based on this story. He describes well that when our dreams are shattered, we tell people that the best thing they could do for themselves is to get away from us. And perhaps that's part of Naomi's reason, you know, for telling her daughters-in-law, you know, return to your homelands. I mean, because I want you to imagine what she's feeling like. Okay, I'm alive, my husband died, my boys died. You know, you're not flesh. I mean, you know, ladies, you know, it's not your problem. It must be me. I mean, I'm cursed. God is striking me. The best thing you could do is get away from me. Have you ever said that? I've said that kind of thing. You ever said that kind of thing to people? You just go, the best thing you could do is get away from me. Save yourself, protect yourself. And so, you imagine her doing it. Both daughters insist they won't leave. They're going to stay with her and join her people, but Naomi insists they go back to their own country because she's thinking of their welfare in the midst of her pain. That's nice, right? And at the same time, you know, thoughts of not having them with her anymore, which is probably like after 10 years at this point. Who knows, right? It just makes her grief even worse. Think about it. Because how hard is it for her to release them, right? If you really love something, you let it go. She loves them so much, she cares for them and has their best interest in mind, even though she now is saying, I'm really giving myself the death sentence. I'm now going to be alone. And, you know, loneliness, there's nothing worse. Nothing worse than being alone. And she knows that is her future. And she just goes, you know, she doesn't wish it upon the daughters. And so you just imagine what she's doing. Even she's not looking out for herself at all. My goodness, she's an amazing woman. And so, lost her husband, lost her son. She's willing to release her daughters. She believes that all this is because God turned against her. Verse 13. And haven't we all concluded at one point that our painful circumstances are because God is against us? He's paying us back for something we did. Did you ever do that? I've done that. Yeah. So Orpah kisses her mother-in-law for the last time. When it just says Orpah kissed her mother, but, you know, Naomi, but Ruth clung to her. So it simply says Orpah took her up on the offer. And now I want you to think about that. So Orpah is saying to herself, yeah, I love you, but, you know, I do have my whole life ahead of me. I'm going to go back. And she's going back now to the Moabite life and religious system and that whole thing. And you never hear from her again. Sorry, she does not go down in history any more than that in the book of God. That Ruth does. Okay.
Of all the biblical characters, wouldn't you pick somebody better than that to name your kid after?
That's my question. Because when I first heard Oprah say that, I mean, she said on one of her shows what I just told you, and I went, did she even read the story?
Yeah, right.
She just liked the mom just liked the name, but I go, okay. So then, somebody please read 15 to 18.
Look, said Naomi, your sister-in-law is going back to her people and her gods. Go back with her. But Ruth replied, don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if anything but death separates you and me. When Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped urging her.
Okay, now, listen real quick. Okay, Naomi, she urges Ruth to do what Orpah did, right? And return to her people and to her gods, she says. Right? She goes, look, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. And I would dare say that Orpah went back to her gods too soon. Which some people do after not waiting long enough for the God of the Bible to reveal to them the truth of their lives and of their circumstances. And Orpah's gods would have included the god Chemosh, who demanded child sacrifice. So if she went back, listen, if she went back and got married, her firstborn she'd have to sacrifice to Chemosh.
Yeah.
She knows this. That's what she's going back to. What do you think about this? Okay? Perhaps Ruth couldn't bear the thought of returning to that heathen environment that she grew up in, especially after living with her Jewish family. So she goes, I like these Jews. I like this Jewish God. Okay? Something's more appealing. So Ruth commits herself, for better or for worse, to Naomi, to Naomi's people, and to Naomi's God. And Ruth means business. She seals her promise with a curse to come upon herself if she broke that commitment. May Yahweh, she says, do thus and so to me, and worse, if anything but death parts me from you. Wow!
I sang that song at a lot of weddings when I was young.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's the funny thing is that a lot of people, that, you know, where you go, I will go. Okay,
Yeah.
It's amazing how many weddings you'll hear that up. It has nothing to do with the wedding.
I know.
But, you know, and a lot of people think it is. Oh, how sweet. You know, no, that's totally out of context, but, you know. Very interesting. And so, now, if we will go 19 to the end of the chapter, please.
So the two women went on until they came to Bethlehem. When they arrived in Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them, and the women exclaimed, "Can this be Naomi?" "Don't call me Naomi," she said, "call me Mara, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi? The Lord has afflicted me. The Almighty has brought misfortune upon me." So Naomi returned from Moab, accompanied by Ruth, the Moabitess, her daughter-in-law, arriving in Bethlehem as the barley harvest was beginning.
Okay, so they head back to Bethlehem. Well, you know, you read verse 1 of chapter 1, that's where they're originally from. So she went home, Naomi did, and took Ruth with her. Bethlehem. Well, now you know why King David was born in Bethlehem. Why he was a shepherd out there under the, under the stars. And, you know, you fast forward centuries, and Jesus is born in Bethlehem. This is a very important little city, okay? A very important little little dot on the map for God. And it's amazing what happens here. It's amazing what Bethlehem is to God and to the biblical story. So here they're in Bethlehem, and you know she's walking into town. You imagine this. For some reason, I almost imagine every time I read that, I imagine a Wild West scene. You know the storefronts, and the raised wooden sidewalks, and people might walk and ride into town, right down the dirt street, and the people kind of leaning against the saloons or whatever. And who's that stranger? And here's these two women by themselves walking on Main Street through the middle of town, and people are going, isn't that Naomi? I mean, where's the boys? I mean, why is she alone? You would not be alone. And why is it just the two of them? Who's she? Who's the girl? Who's the young gal with her? They don't know yet. And she's hearing this. She's hearing him say, "Isn't that Naomi? That's Naomi." And she goes to the people she hasn't seen for at least a decade, maybe. Don't call me Naomi. What is the word Naomi? Do you remember the name Naomi is in Hebrew? It's pleasant. Don't call me pleasant. Call me Mara, which is bitter, which is actually where Miriam, Mary, it's the same name. Okay. So don't call me this. Call me bitter, because that's my life. And wait till you hear this. And word gets around somehow. She at one point is going to tell somebody and tell whoever, how many people to tell everybody, oh my gosh, did you hear what happened to Naomi? Naomi's back, and she's got this one daughter, and all the three boys dead. And they're going to tell the story, and that story is going to get out. And it's going to actually reach somebody that we're going to meet, apparently, in the next chapter next week. We can relate, as we're most often embittered and depressed by tragedy and disappointment. Have you ever gone away full only to come back empty? I've had that. I mean, you go into something and something's great and there's blessing and there's expanse and then some tragic happens and you go, I literally have nothing to show for that. What souvenirs do I have? There was so much and now I have so little. Okay, well, life on earth, welcome to life for many people. So the timing of her return, though, is no accident. We see once again that God's people are on God's timetable even when they're clueless about it. Because it said in verse 22, they arrived at the beginning of bam! That's actually...
That's not by accident.
That is not by accident. That actually is what sets her. God is so good. The God of the details. It sets up how she's going to get locked in. Everything's going to be peaches. Okay? Maybe we start chapter 2. Peachy. Gloria.
Could you tell me your rationale for the reasoning behind the statement that women have no value in the Jewish society?
No, again, women were treated very little. Because, again, I had a long conversation with somebody about this on the phone on my way to Sioux Falls, actually. Most of the world still lives in what I call the punishment narrative, the fall of chapter 3 of Genesis, right? God throws out the punishment, and to the woman, you're going to have increased pain in childbearing. And then, and I'm sure I've said this before, but there's like parentheses that in the Hebrew close when God says to Adam, you're going to work your rear off now, it's by the sweat of your brow, you're going to make your bread. I ain't going to make stuff just kind of come out of the ground, and it's easy peasy for you. For the woman, a lot of extra work. For the snake, the serpent, you're crawling your belly. And then there's a closing of that, and then God, it's as if he goes, by the way, he talks to Eve. As a side note, just to let you know, he's going to take advantage of his size and strength and rule over you, and you're going to hate this. You're going to wish you had that place, again, of co-creation, fellow heirs, co-dominion, co-rulers. You were king and queen of earth. But because of the sin, the fracture, your relationship is fractured. So not only with me is there separation, there's separation between the two of you. And because of how I doled out the things, which is the image of God, the masculine, the feminine, he actually got this, he's a little bigger, a little stronger, and he's going to, in a fallen nature, make him think he's better than you. He's going to rule over you. And so when you look at most societies, for the most part, they've been patriarchal. And in most societies throughout history, around the world, historically, women are treated as inferiors. In many countries today, they're treated as inferiors. In the ancient world, I call this the ancient world, they were treated as inferiors. You know, men are not traded for cows. They're not valued by her father by how many cows is he worth. There's no dowry for the guy. No. But she is worth what? You trade a woman, you get a woman by giving her father livestock. And so that's her worth. There's no, I'm not giving you Fort Knox. Here's $10 billion. That's what your wife is worth to me. No, I'm going to give you some cattle for it. Now, there was value to that. But I'm simply saying that's the bartering system. I want your daughter, and I'm going to give you want a couple cows if I give you? That'll be fine. Now, I want you to think about that. Okay? And so, in the ancient world, that's how women were. Because of the fall. It is the fall. Many men in churches today live in the fall. Even though they know Jesus, when he died on the cross, if he forgave all sins, if he repaired what was broken, the fracture, there should now be co-dominion, which is part of my conversation with somebody, like I was saying Sunday, as I drove to Sioux Falls. For you who didn't know, I came back today. Spent time with Kayla and Daryl and the grandkids. You see in the New Testament something you don't see anywhere else. You see more women mentioned in strategic places in a smaller amount of scripture than in all the scripture of the Old Testament. Women are taking these amazing places. They're prophets. They have churches in their homes. They're in prison with Paul because they're doing what Paul did. They were missionaries, church planners. Because as Paul learned, and he finally wrote down, in Christ I realize there ain't no male nor female. We're all one in Christ Jesus, he says. Bingo. We are fellow heirs. Then he says something you'd never find in the Old Testament, and you never did. Hey, for the sake of your prayers, you better treat your wife well. Otherwise, God ain't going to listen to you. Where's that in the Old Testament? In the New Testament, it's, submit, Ephesians 5:21. Submit to one another. To one another. Out of your reverence for Christ. Then you just got a different arrangement. All of a sudden, there's something changing. So, Jesus, he rewrites the punishment narrative. He restores it, and I think the greatest thing he did was, again, he gave... God does everything on purpose. The first people to show up at his empty tomb, women. And he gives them the job to go tell the frightened men that he rose from the dead. They're given, the first to fall, traditionally, and in the Jewish culture, Eve, it's all Eve, it's all Eve's fault. Listen, how many Christians today go, it was Eve's fault?
I've heard it.
It's Eve's fault.
Yeah.
Why?
Where was Adam?
God came looking for Adam.
Yeah.
God comes through the garden. Adam, where are you? I'm not looking for you. Adam. Well, we're hiding. Why? Well, you do something I told you not to do? Well, she gave it to me, and you know how the story is. He's standing right by her and says, and then she turned and gave it to her husband who was with her. So God gave the command not to eat to Adam, not to Eve. His job was to make sure she didn't do that, and he didn't do it. He was the guy. That's why we don't have, Paul doesn't write, we need a second Eve, we need a second Adam. Because Adam's the guy. He was the first one made, he blew it. The responsibility is really more on him than on her. I keep going on this.
Yeah.
So, what is this? So long story short, in that day, again, because of the fall, because what God says is going to happen is going to happen. That was prophecy. Man is going to rule over you. All males, generally speaking, are going to rule over women, generally speaking. And that's what happened. And that's why you have this. And you've got 3 women just going, we got nothing.
No, man.
Because the guys get it all. Just like God said. Is that a long answer? Did that answer?
Does that, but I don't understand it. Okay.
It's because of the fall.
No, I understand that,
Okay.
but I think that God has always women have always had value, and it was never intended that they would be devalued, because
Right. Right?
his intention from the beginning was that Christ would come and die. And
Yes.
he would come to seek his bride,
Yes.
and
The whole church, male and
she
female.
was worth dying for, because there was a price that had to be paid.
Yes.
It's not cattle, it's his life.
Yes.
But a man was valued or seen by his possessions. How many cattle? Because you see so many times, he had so many.
Oh, yeah.
He had so many millions.
He has it all.
So many.
It doesn't say, yeah, the woman has this. It's always about him, because all the possessions were passed out by them. Was I not clear?
That's a worldly view of it. You know, you're talking the godly view of it. So.
Yeah. So I don't know if
This
was
is
I
world-
clear?
Ruth is affected by the worldly view of women.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Ruth. The whole thing of Ruth's situation is affected by the world's view. It has nothing to do with God wanting that. And was I clear? When I was talking about Genesis chapter 3 and the punishment narrative, when God's doling out the punishment to the serpent, to the man, then to the woman for the sin, He doesn't say, I want it this way. And I want, where's the verse that says, I want man to rule over you.
No,
Yeah,
it did not
it's
say
there.
that. No.
And you are going to be, and you get to be on the grovel like the devil. You're down there like the snake. No, that's to the snake, not to the woman made in his image. What he says to the woman, again, in the Hebrew language, there's quotes that close. After God says, snake, you're on the dirt. Man, you're going to work harder now. Woman, you got more pain. Close. And then God says, and by the way, as a side note, just thought I'd warn you. I don't want this. This isn't part of I'm not giving it. I don't want it this way. This is going to be an automatic outcome of the fracture, of the fall and the fracture. He's going to demean you, lord it over you throughout world history, and you're just going to keep wanting that position back. What position? It says you will, and your desire will be for him, some of your English translations say, but it's actually, and your desire, okay, will be for his position. More accurately, your former position, what you had, the position you both had, the position you had with him. He's not going to let you have it because of the sinful nature in him now. See, he will now, as a sinful person, he sees himself different. Once they're sinful, they realize they were naked. Something's wrong with me. I got to cover up, right? Guilt, shame, whatever. Because of the sinful nature now of Adam, he now looks at her like, don't talk to me like that. Who are you to talk? Who are you? What? I mean, all of a sudden he's the big tough guy.
It's your fault.
It's your fault, right? So very interesting. And thank you, Lord. There's not, there's not a lot of men like that today. I pray. They're still here. But.
He was basically, if I'm correct in thinking, he was basically explaining the consequences of their actions.
Just explain the consequences. Not that he wanted that.
No.
That's why he said to the snake, your punishment will be on the ground. To the woman, to the man, your punishment will be. To the woman, your punishment will be. But I'm trying to tell you, then that's it. And then God he doesn't say, and I want you to be groveling on the ground and subservient to him. He didn't say that.
He said.
So did that make sense? I don't know if that clarified that. It didn't clarify it.
No, I understand that, yeah. I'm just saying that women did have value.
Yeah, they did.
Yes,
In the-
but not as a man.
In the Jewish community,
But
they were
not-
protected by the men.
But if they didn't have a
Because-
man, they weren't of value.
Yeah.
What'd you say, Judy?
Well, that's.
That's a good way of saying it.
That's
Have a
worldly
man, they
value,
weren't
though.
of value.
Right? We know that God saw them both having value, men and women. Absolutely. Even after the fall. Both have equal value. God knows it. But part of the sin, men didn't see it necessarily. And they created a culture that way. Go to a Muslim country today and you'll know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Just go to a Muslim country and there it is. That's what it is right there. Right? So it's not what God wanted, that's just how it is. They had value. Men would protect a wife, a woman, a daughter, like they protect any of their possessions. But you don't see them treated as equals very often. You'll see certain things like Isaac loving Rebecca, and oh, I love you to death, and oh my gosh, and you're the most beautiful thing. And you see some relationships where there's a little more balance, but it's still, he's got the hots, marries her, but she's not his equal. Make sense? And so I might go too long on it, but would you tell me even if I...
No, because
So,
we enjoy it.
was down there. So that's what sets up the the rest of the story, is that she's got to have a man to have. I like how Julie, how did you say? I like what you said.
She didn't have value if she didn't have a man.
Yeah, she didn't have value if she didn't have a man.
Right. She was the widow that we were supposed to take care of.
Yeah,
Give you widow rights.
yeah.
Well, she would have ended up a prostitute probably.
Yeah.
Or a
about
charwoman, or,
Yeah. Yeah.
taking care of somebody else's babies.
Yeah. So why do I think I'm not clear yet? Are we?
No, I understand.
There's something that's not resolved.
Well, I'm just
Maybe
thinking,
I'm not understanding.
her husband's family then would be responsible for her, or her father's family, because
Yes.
when a woman was
Yes.
sent away from her husband or widowed, then she returned to her father's home.
Right, but she didn't go to her own dad's home.
Right.
And besides that, he was a Moabite.
Yeah. She didn't want to go back to the Moab.
No, I'm not saying Ruth, I'm saying Naomi.
Yeah, but so she goes back, but there is nobody because her husband's dead. He died back in Moab.
Right. But there's
So she
nothing said
literally
about
returns
if
to
he
go-
had family or anything, and he could have.
No, but
That's
no,
fine.
that's the whole story. That's
That's
who. All of a sudden, that's why they need to find somebody. And chapter 2 is she goes, okay, we got this problem. I got no nearest of kin, right? I got no. I don't have a kinsman redeemer. That you know that I know of right around here. I mean, who and that's all of a sudden they stumble upon.
The next
Don't
chapter.
We know his name.
Spoiler alert. So yeah,
The story gets better.
she
Yeah.
finds
Oh, that's, yeah.
that
Kin-
person is found. The relative is found. Oh, I could have everything back. Oh my gosh, you mean I get to keep everything? Yes, the relative will be found. But again, the status of the woman is right there before you. It's like, but if he's not found, it goes to the state, so to speak. You know, studies in probate. I love it. That's just how it is. Okay, so
Thank
any
you.
questions?
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Gary.
Why has our government and our laws sought to change that? And now women and men are equal?
What caused him?
Now why?
Women's suffrage.
Why would you change that? Well, sure, I understand that, but
Yeah.
why would you even think of changing that if it was God's intent to
Oh, right.
keep the woman subservient?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I mean, there's a lot of things that people are trying to change. Communist. Yeah, there you go.
But,
Yeah.
but it wasn't God's intent.
Yeah, it wasn't
was the
God's
result
intent in the
of
first place to do
fall.
that.
Right.
But I mean,
No, that's right, Adam's fallen nature.
Yeah.
But somebody has to be the head. You can't have all chiefs. And
God's
God
supposed to be
designated
the
that-
head.
Right.
so,
And then the man, and then the woman. It doesn't make the woman less, it just gives her.
right, but you're now talking, okay, and,
Something else.
but this is a different, that's a different animal.
Mhm.
And that's only something described in the New Testament. I think now where you're getting, right? Right, Christ the head of the man is the head of the wife. Okay. So that's another boop thing, and
Or the same
we can hit that later if you want, another time.
And
But,
you mentioned also that her punishment was pain in childbirth.
right, increased,
Increased pain, okay?
because there was
How
already.
come animals have the same thing?
The entire nation, or the entire creation was subject
Male and
to
Male and
decay.
Oh,
Yeah, Paul says, ever since the fall, the creation's been groaning, waiting to be resurrected, restored. So that's what's neat about what we see in Revelation, and the Jews believed it, but we primarily see it in Revelation that when the Lord returns, there is a resurfacing of the world, a remaking of the world. It's made new. Not only us, because Paul even says the world is groaning to be remade, okay, just like we are. And so there's going to be the resurrection of life, us, and there's going to be literally a resurrection of the world. And that's, that's something that's important. And I would say the JW's got that one right. Okay, the Jehovah's Witnesses they always make a big deal about the earth, and God's not going to destroy this earth. And actually, they're right. A lot of Christians say, "Oh yeah, he's going to destroy it because he's making a new one. Ever since he made the first one, he's working on a new one somewhere else in the galaxy." No, he's not. Actually, he's going to remake this one new, like he's remaking us new at the resurrection. So what's interesting about that is that everything is made new, because everything at the beginning, again, if he's restoring life, if he's restoring his creation, all of it, well, that started with the earth and everything that was made good. And we do have a symbiotic relationship with the earth, and we were called to be the king and queen of it and have dominion over it. We gave that deed over to the devil, and the creation has suffered over it. And I would dare say, explain tornadoes, earthquakes, all that. The world is falling apart. It is decaying along with us. And so it needs to be remade, and he will. And he'll shore it up. He remakes the foundation, then it's going to be glorious. And he's going to put a brand new Jerusalem on it. It's going to be nice. Can't wait.
Did you all hear that the Aunt Jemima product line is being?
Heard about that.
Yes.
Oh, please, no. I love Aunt Jemima.
It's gonna stay the same, just a
This
different name.
this product line, some of you may know this story.
She's black, so
Some of you may know this, but
It's a
this
racial
product
stereotype.
line has been around since 1890.
Yeah.
Yes, and everybody slurped it up.
Her name is Nancy Green. She was a former slave. She was contracted by the Quaker Oats Company to make this brand of pancake mix and syrup and whatever. She was very well compensated.
Yes.
She was under contract with the company. They made products with the brand on there that she got a cut of every one of it. And
Yeah. She was the first model.
she was a model.
She was the first African-American model.
She was the first African-American model.
Really?
And now the modern day idiots want to take it down. And now Mrs. Butterworth is following suit. There's no more Mrs. Butterworth now either.
Really?
And Uncle Ben is going away.
Yeah.
And Uncle Ben.
Oh my goodness.
Yep, yep.
Well, I'm sure he was a plantation owner.
There you go.
Oh,
We're
well,
offending everybody.
that's a good possibility.
And what's the Paw
He was a
Patrol,
man.
which my grandson River
I
loves,
could not believe
because
that.
it glorifies a police officer. He's a little dog, he's a police officer.
So we gotta
Okay.
get rid of the Paw Patrol.
I understood that,
Shooting around.
right, I understood that,
My grandkids love that.
Andy Griffith is being taken off Netflix.
Oh my
And
goodness.
that is because it glorifies police officers.
It glorifies what?
No.
It's going Saturday, yeah.
What, you said it because it glorified what?
Police
I mean, it
officers.
just puts them in a good light.
Well,
I mean, it's
yeah.
just,
So, the blue
if
bloods
our
is
nation
probably
doesn't
next.
fight
Yeah.
this.
Taken off and-
Oh, wait a minute.
Oh, man.
What's gonna happen to NCIS?
CIS,
It's all-
where's it
That's
gonna
all
stop?
I'm gonna say.
Law and order,
What's it?
gone.
But, yeah, right, that'll all be gone. Eric, what's it again?
They did away with Little Black Sambo when I was a kid.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
And I
Same
had the
reason.
book. I had the book and I
Of course I did.
wish I still had it, because it was my favorite book.
Racist.
Yeah.
Wow. The whole thing was the tiger turned into butter.
I know.
Yeah, wasn't that yummy?
I just looked at Aunt Jemima as honoring her, that she was this
And
great cook. She was
There-
great.
there you go.
in the
Because she was
period,
so good.
how
Yeah.
was it that she was,
Demoralizing, how is that?
I think,
Yes.
And-
Because they don't know the
are you
story.
looking at your own depiction?
They're
of something-
looking at their own
that
racism.
you hate, yeah, I mean,
Oh.
I don't want us to look like it, but what if
They're
you did?
operating out
I
of
mean,
their
what
own
if you wore that
racism.
kind of thing on your hair? I mean,
I mean,
you know,
Idiocy.
She was a mammy, for
In the
God's
day,
sakes.
I mean, you know, it wasn't.
For gosh sakes.
Everything that they're coming out against are things that they're guilty of.
Yes.
And that is,
that too.
Their own racism.
most individuals who are critical thinkers can see that. Is every time they point their finger,
Boy,
it's actually a.
Really,
see,
these
people
three-
better fight against
Yeah,
this.
these three pointing back,
You
yeah.
gotta fight against this, otherwise, otherwise, what people are caving into, I mean, the people who have caved into everything so far.
It's just.
Can you imagine all the things people have already caved into, because we've offended, you know, we might offend you. I mean, that
Yeah, it's
this
time
is
to stop
possible
being
now?
offensive.
Oh, what's next? I mean, if all of a sudden, if the Christians are the offense of, oh man, we'll be turned on like this.
Well, the Lord did say that we
It's
were
already
going to get,
happening.
Yeah.
the Lord did say we were gonna get beat up on, so.
Churches are
The
still
Bible's
not
offensive.
open. Ministers are still going to jail or getting arrested because they're celebrating. You know, there's a lot of things already coming against us.
Well, the Supreme Court's ruling on
Ugh.
expanding, you know, protected classes now, and their, you know, their adjustment to the Civil Rights Act. There you go. That actually now would make part of the Bible, sections of Scripture unlawful,
Yes, it would.
because
Yeah, we
it says
can't
something
have
different
that.
of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court says, no, this is fine, normal, natural, protected. The Bible goes, no,
Mm-mm.
no, this is not God's design. So now what? There'll be a showdown.
And that's why we come to essential theology.
Bring it on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know where we're at.
When are we building the gun range out here?
Got that from the.
Maybe we need walls.
Yes.
Like they put up at CHOP.
I was thinking more like Jerusalem.
Okay.
Big old stones.
And all of these white people that are supposedly so pure, that aren't thinking of racism, back to your Jemima, you know, here she is, just a good old cook and a nice old lady.
Yeah.
No, she wasn't, she was a house slave for some white guy.
That's the narrative.
That's how they think.
And in the period of time that
Stole her
she was,
patent.
in the period of time that she was active in her career, to be referred to as an aunt by somebody who you weren't related to was a signal of
Absolutely.
Respect.
respect.
Respect, honor.
Hey, I still get that from Casey and I love
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Does anybody watch Adam 12 in the afternoons?
No.
I think it was last.
Grew up with it. What?
Yeah.
Which episode?
It's on in the afternoon.
Yeah.
I think it was last Thursday after we talked about all the, you know, the killings and about the police officers and everything. I had it on while I was doing stuff around the house, and it was the senior partner, Malloy, relating about his previous partner and how he died and how he lived. And then it ends with his former partner's funeral and his wife and 2 little, very small children. And it's Malloy narrating this the whole way through, and at the end he said, and it was a really excellent like little speech at the end. It said, very few will remember him. Very shortly he will be forgotten. There won't be any demonstrations. There won't be any flag waving.
Wow.
There won't be any parades to protest. He died doing what he was supposed to do. And then the narrator of the show says, "Elegy for a pig." It was so apropos. So apropos. I said, boy, the timing on that one was interesting.
Well, hey, let's pray. Father, we're asking for wisdom and for eyes to see, ears to hear, whatever your Spirit would be saying to us about the times we're living in and how to interpret these times and how to respond to them, live within them, and accomplish within them. Again, Lord, we're all grateful for this specific church family and that we can have these kind of conversations. Don't know how many churches have these kind of conversations.
Amen.
I think very few would. But we believe you want us to. And we're going to say once again, we want to step up to the plate, whatever you would have us do. We want to do it. We want to make a positive difference. We want to be used to warn people, to clarify things, to reveal things, to help people not be duped by the bad players out there. We want to see a church that is wise and ready to live in these days. And give us strength and courage, no fear, and bring us all the more closer to you and closer to each other, because we know we're going to need that. And we don't want to see anyone picked off by the wolves. And just help us also, Lord, be aware of each other and how we're faring in these days and whatever's going to happen in the future here. But that we're just going to watch over each other and guard each other and have each other's backs and be prepared to defend each other, protect each other. And Lord, we want to be involved in coming to the rescue of what is good in this country and in this very city. Now, Lord, we ask you that you protect our things, protect our possessions, protect this property, our individual properties, protect that, protect our families, protect our own lives. And Lord, we do ask again, hoping that somehow all this junk, that at one point as it keeps peaking, will finally just fall apart like Nebuchadnezzar's statue. It will just, something's going to hit the clay feet and it's going to come tumbling down. And that it'll be seen for what it is.
Yes, Lord.
And that a lot of people's eyes are going to be opened. And they'll recognize who is against them, who is for them, who is against the good in the United States and who's for it. And the people will simply know what to do. We're still asking for your hand of protection, mercy, direction, blessing, strength on this country. Forbid it from going down, Father God. And that's what we ask. And Lord, give President Trump a good night's rest tonight.
Yes, Lord.
And maybe speak to him in his dreams. If there's something you would say to him. Give him an insight, a strategy, an effective cure. Keep us safe as we head home. We're asking you, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, everybody.
I don't know, did you happen to see the